Lately, I came across a question that really caught my eye. Why does China want Russia to lose the war? It's a fascinating topic and honestly worth unpacking. Now, some people jump to conclusions. They think this means China wants Russia to win on the battlefield. But that's not quite right. To understand what's really going on, we first need to look at what Russia losing actually means and what kind of relationship China and Russia really have. Once you figure those out, everything else starts to make sense. Let's start with the basics. When it comes to the United States, China and Russia share a common rival, and that naturally makes them strategic partners. Russia brings energy and military muscle to the table. China brings economic strength and global reach. Together, they can balance American pressure. If you pull Iran into the picture, it fits to acting as an energy hub and a counterweight in the Middle East. So of course, China wants Russia and Iran to keep America busy on those fronts. And guess what? Russia and Iran feel exactly the same way. They'd love for China to share some of that pressure too. But here's the key. This isn't an alliance. There's no treaty, no NATO-style Article 5. It's more of a back-to-back arrangement, not shoulder to shoulder. They face the same enemy, yes, but they're not marching in step. Their goals, often very different. Take the global order, for instance. China criticizes EU's dominance, sure, but it's also a major beneficiary of the existing system. For decades, that order helped China rise. So Beijing doesn't want to smash the system, it wants to reshape it, to make more room at the table. Russia? Totally different story. Moscow wants to tear the system down. Putin dreams of turning Russia into a third pole between Washington and Beijing, kind of like what Charles de Gaulle tried during the Cold War. But here's the reality, Russia doesn't have the power for that. Not in tech, not in economics, not in industry. It lacks staying power and global influence. And after more than 3 years of war, even its military edge has been badly damaged. Putin's playing cards are thin. The only person he can really bully now is Zelensky. So, knowing it can't win inside the current order, Russia tries to wreck the game, starting wars, meddling in elections, cozying up to anti-Western regimes. If Moscow can't live well, it wants everyone else to live worse. It thrives in chaos. China does. For Beijing, stability is everything because that's where its markets, resources, and technologies come from. That's why China keeps warning against escalation. Don't let the war spill over. Don't use nukes. Russia can fight America in Europe, fine. But creating global disorder, that's crossing the line. And let's not forget, China and Russia also compete. They eye each other warily in Central Asia. They cooperate on energy, but both are cautious. China avoids overdependence on Russian oil. Russia avoids letting China take the lead. When analysts say Russia's becoming China's energy vassal, imagine how that sounds to Putin. Yet not great. So, if we summarize this complicated relationship, China and Russia are partners in tactics, but rivals in strategy. Each uses the other, but neither truly trusts. China does want Russia to rise too high, but it doesn't want it to fall apart either. A nightmare scenario. Russia collapsing into chaos, splintering into mini-states, and leaving a nuclear mess right on China's doorstep. Because if that happens, the US will rush in, backing new governments near China's borders, turning the whole north into a geopolitical headache. Now, let's talk about what Russia losing could actually mean. There are 4 main versions of defeat. Battlefield failure: Russia withdraws from all Ukrainian territory. Strategic failure: it can't control Ukraine. Western sanctions crush its economy, and its military power breaks down. Regime failure: Putin's government falls, and a pro-Western democracy takes over. Systemic failure: Russia itself collapses, splintering into independent republics, with nuclear weapons scattered around. These outcomes can connect in sequence: battlefield defeat leading to strategic defeat, then regime change, then collapse, or they might not. A war lost does always destroy a regime. And sometimes, even a military victory plants the seeds of collapse, like the Soviets in Afghanistan. So which version does China fear most? And which would hurt China the least? The least harmful. Battlefield failure. Whether Russia holds Ukrainian land or not doesn't affect China much. Strategic failure. Mixed bag. A weaker Russia means less help against America, but more cheap oil for China. Region failure, that's worse. A pro-Western Moscow means China loses a partner and gains a rival. Still, if Putin steps aside for another Putin, that's fine. Beijing doesn't care who's in the chair, as long as Russia stays predictable. But the absolute red line is systemic failure, Russia breaking apart. That would be a disaster. Chaos, nukes, and new Western influence flooding into Asia, a nightmare for Beijing. So, China doesn't care if Russia wins big or loses small. What it wants is for the war to drag on, not losing, not winning. A weakened but stable Russia, one that keeps America busy, but doesn't break the world order. Because for China, a manageable opponent is far better than an uncontrollable mess. A rival you understand is safer than a neighbor you can predict. So no, China does want Russia's victory. And it doesn't want its destruction either. It just wants the game to keep going with the board still intact. What if Russia really does collapse, though? What would China do next? Is a story for another day.